If you're stuck in a 9 to 5 you don't enjoy, freedom can sometimes feel impossible, and you probably think the only way out is to have millions saved or invested in the bank so you never have to work again. But the truth is, you're closer to freedom than you think. If you're new here, hi, I'm Pav, and I'm a chartered accountant that spent 12 years working in finance in London before leaving that career and taking a 30% pay cut to do a job I enjoy instead. And I didn't get there by taking one big leap and waiting until I was rich. Instead, I got there by breaking it into smaller, realistic steps. And in this video, I will show you the path that can get you closer to freedom too. Most people think that freedom means walking into the office tomorrow and handing in their resignation to their boss. And that is what I call the myth of the big leap. They picture needing millions saved or invested in the bank so they never have to work again. And of course, the thought of that can feel really overwhelming and like you're never going to get there. And that's exactly what I thought. There was one Monday morning when I woke up, had a panic attack, and couldn't face going into work. And I thought the only way out was to be able to leave and never look back. But I knew I couldn't do that at the time because I needed to earn a certain level of income. And so I felt trapped. But the mistake I made was believing that freedom has to be one giant leap. Whereas in reality, freedom comes from creating options. And that can start much closer to where you are right now, because it doesn't start with having millions in the bank. It starts with just one single number. Because the very first step towards freedom isn't quitting, it isn't investing, and it isn't starting a side hustle. It's something much simpler, and that is knowing your essential costs. These are the costs that you have to incur each month to sustain your life. So things like your rent, mortgage, essential bills, groceries, travel to work, debt repayments. Knowing this number is the foundation of understanding your financial position because it tells you how much money you really have to work with. For example, if your take-home pay is £2,000 a month, but your essential living costs are £1,800 a month, your true starting point isn't £2,000. It's really £200 because that's all you have to work with once your essential living costs have been paid. And this is where a lot of people go wrong because they think they've got £2,000 to play with, but really that amount is much lower. And when I did this exercise, it changed everything because I suddenly realized to have some more freedom, I didn't need to replace my entire salary. I just needed to replace my essential living costs. And suddenly the mountain I thought I had to climb in front of me felt much smaller. So if you're wanting more freedom for yourself, your first step is to calculate your essential living costs and write this number down. So once you know your true starting point, the next step is to build an emergency fund. So this is your breathing space, your buffer, so that if something unexpected comes up, you know you're going to be covered. A good rule of thumb is to have about 6 months of essential living costs saved in the bank at any time. But if that feels overwhelming right now, then start with 1 month's essential costs as your first milestone and build up slowly. And the reason this matters is because having that safety net does a huge amount for your confidence and your peace of mind. It stops you feeling fearful, and combined with knowing what your essential living costs are every month, it helps you feel in control. And it was that feeling of control that eventually allowed me to take that 30% pay cut and leave my career in finance because I knew that if something went wrong, I still had a safety net and a cushion that I could fall back on. So once you've got clarity on your essential living costs and your emergency fund built up, you now have 2 paths that you can take to start creating some freedom. Option 1 is where you use your job as a vehicle. So this is where you take any additional income you have left over after covering your essential costs or saved over and above your emergency fund and invest it into income generating assets. Now, whether this path is right for you will depend on how much additional income you have left each month or saved and how quickly you want the income from these assets to start covering your essential costs. And this is exactly the path I took. While I was working in finance, I used my additional income and my savings to invest and build a property portfolio. And over time, the income from those properties covered my essential living costs. And that is what gave me the confidence to take a 30% pay cut, walk away, and now do a job that I enjoy a lot more instead. Now, different investment vehicles offer different returns and different income. I'm not saying property is the right one. You have to figure out which one is right for you based on your goals and how quickly you want to get your essential costs covered. But when the income from your investments is covering your essential living costs, you suddenly have options and choices available to you. It could be the choice to change career and do something you enjoy instead, or take a pay cut and work less hours so you can spend more time with your family, or take that chance and go full time into a side hustle that you're passionate about. But having that as a goal to work towards can go a long way to shifting your mindset and the way you see your job. You suddenly stop resenting your job and seeing it as a prison, and you start seeing it as a tool that's going to help you get to where you want to be. But if you don't have enough income left to invest after your essential costs are covered, then the second option is that you need to earn more by creating additional income streams. That can be through side hustles or learning new skills. However, this isn't something that you can jump into straight away, because before you can make more money, there's something else you need, and that is time. Because when you're exhausted from a 9 to 5, it's incredibly difficult to find the motivation to learn a new skill or start a side hustle. And that's why the first thing you need to focus on is taking back control of your time. And this means understanding exactly how you're spending your time right now so you can see where the leaks are and plug the gaps. And the best way to do this is a simple exercise called a time audit. Now, this is where you spend 2 weeks and you break every day down into 15-minute blocks and you log everything you're doing in each of those 15-minute blocks every single day. So this includes everything from time spent in the shower to socializing, scrolling on social media, working, traveling to work. Log everything in a spreadsheet. Here's one I did a couple of months ago when I was feeling a bit overwhelmed and out of control with how I was spending my time. And it really helped me get the clarity I needed so I could make some adjustments to feel in control again. So it's a great exercise to do every now and then to hold yourself accountable and make sure that you're using your time in the best way possible. So at the end of the 2 weeks, you then review your spreadsheet to see how much time you spent on each activity, and an easy hack is to ask ChatGPT to do this for you, which is what I did, and then decide what are the areas that you're wasting time on that you can cut out and replace that time with learning a new skill or starting your side hustle. When I was still working in finance and I did this exercise, I realized that I was wasting a lot of time commuting, and so I started going into the office only 1 day a week, or some weeks not at all, which I wouldn't recommend because it did take its toll on me mentally. But even an extra hour per day reinvested into something that matters to you will compound over time. And I know it sounds tiny, but those small steps compounded over time are how you get to a place of freedom. And finally, once you have an idea for a side hustle or an additional income stream, it's important to not allow yourself to get overwhelmed. Big goals like I want to quit my job or I want to retire early can feel overwhelming, and that's why it's important to break them down into smaller steps. So instead of aiming to replace all your essential costs, start with a micro goal like covering 1 month's groceries, and then an essential bill, and then car insurance. And eventually, all of these micro goals stack up to something much bigger. And the amazing thing is, when you break it down, you might realize that you're only 1 or 2 micro goals away from experiencing your first taste of freedom. So if you're stuck in a job that you don't enjoy and you thought freedom was 20 years away, then hopefully you can see that now it's actually much closer and that it isn't one big giant leap, but instead it's a series of small steps that compound over time. And they may not feel like much now, but give it a few months or a year, and you may realize that you've created more freedom for yourself than you thought was possible. And if you found this video helpful, then please don't forget to subscribe. And you may want to check out this video where I talk about how you can use your job more intentionally to create more freedom for yourself. And I'll leave the link for that here.